A few hours later, things looked better because the wind turned. We decided to carry on. We followed the electric cables that led to the seismographs of the geologists. They had been set up right on the edge of the crater. The ground was hot and rather unsteady. At the top there were bottomless fissures from which hot sulfur fumes were pouring. We could approach from leeward and take pictures. The mountain had split 300 feet in length. Actually, we were able to film without anxiety for several hours, but as we turned back, our cameraman, Ed Luckman, discovered he had left his spectacles behind. We decided to pick them up the next day if the mountain still existed by then. The people of Guadeloupe, perhaps, were so aware of danger because in 1902 there had been a catastrophe in the neighboring island of Martinique. This is a photo of the town of Saint-Pierre in Martinique taken in 1901. There were 32,000 people living in Saint-Pierre. The town was the administrative and cultural center of the whole island. There was even a horse-drawn tram and an opera house. The town, like Basse-Terre, lay at the foot of a volcano, Montagne Pelée. Basically, the warnings emitted by the volcano were identical to those of La Soufriere. The population intended to flee, but since there was an election which had already been postponed for other reasons, the governor persuaded the people to stay. Only a few hundred left the town. All others remained. This is a photo taken on May 6, 1902, 2 days before the catastrophe. And this is the last picture taken before the catastrophe. The population had grown restless. Some of them gathered on the beach, still thinking of fleeing. Then, the next day, this here. It is an actual photo, not a painting. A dead cow in the water, and to the right in the background, hard to make out, the half-sunken wreck of the Canadian ship Roraima. It had tied up to take on refugees. It sank with all hands and not one soul survived. In the town there was practically not a single stone left standing. All was silence. The horrified rescue teams found not a living soul. The people had been charred to a cinder, 30,000 dead in all. What had happened? There had been no usual outbreak of lava. The mountain had spouted a cloud of gas in an explosion of searing flame. The whole thing could only have taken seconds. This is a meal of spaghetti burned to a cinder on a plate. And here is a loaf of bread turned into black coal. And then they found one survivor, just one. It was a young thief, Soufriere, who was in prison. The miracle of his survival is that he only survived because he was the baddest guy in town. There were about 60 to 70 prisoners besides him, but he was the only one that behaved so badly, continually fighting with the wardens, so that as punishment he was placed in an underground solitary confinement. When the blast of the heat struck, he threw himself to the ground and suffered severe back burns. Later he was exhibited as a sideshow attraction in an American circus and lived until 1956. Here is a photo of Soufriere in the hospital, where he suffered for several weeks. The hours passed and the waiting began. The silence grew ever deeper and the volcano La Soufriere shrouded itself in clouds. Nobody knew whether the eruption would happen in the next few minutes or the next day, and because one could not see a thing, the fear became anonymous. On that day, we found the man who had refused to leave the district and 2 others. We had to wake him up first. What's going on here? You have refused to leave the district, haven't you? Yes, I'm here because it's God's will. I'm waiting for my death, and I wouldn't know where to go anyway. I haven't a cent. I am poor. You're waiting for death? Yes, and no one knows when it will come. It is as God has commanded. He will not only take me to his bosom, but everyone else. Like life, death is forever. I haven't the slightest fear. Yes, because it's God's will, and no one can tell when death will come. Are you afraid? Not one bit. Why not? God takes everyone to his bosom, not just one, not just me. He has ordained this for us. Why don't you move out? Where should I go? Death waits forever. It is eternal. I am not afraid of dying.
Si vous avez un bal, donnez-moi encore une fois.